Here. Okay. I'll mention that we're going around and sharing what exposure, if any, we've had to the Sphirot. We've just begun our third class. Okay. Suzanne, were you going to say something? Oh, I think you already did. Okay. All right. Debbie or Nelson?
I know very little about it except reading. I think Safat was a community where some of it was nurtured. Um, and I've been fascinated, and I think I talked with the rabbi about the fact that it was only for men and only for mature enough people, which always fascinated me. Otherwise, it was considered dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use it, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I think you might be talking about the Kabbalah in general. Yeah,
Yes,
any study of the Kabbalah.
right.
But
Is that not the subject? I'm sorry, I tuned in late.
okay. Debbie.
Yeah, so I've read, brief things about it and some of the reading I've done the last couple of years, and I've seen the diagrams, different renditions of those diagrams, but my knowledge is pretty surface
Okay.
as of now.
Good to know. Judith or Sigal?
I'll go. Well, I think I've heard Wendy and RA talk about it at different times in the Torah Circle over the last 3 years. Plus, I did take a 3-session course from Daniel Matt online on Kabbalah about 3 years ago. So I heard him talk about it, but it's not part of my everyday spiritual practice. So I really don't remember it very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And Sigal? And then Kathy, if you're with us.
No knowledge whatsoever.
Okay. And Kathy?
Yeah, I resonated with what Philip said. I've seen the diagram. I think there's either it or something very much like it in the Siddur for the High Holy Days. And I'm always drawn to systems. Like here's a chart, here's a graph, here's a way of organizing something. So I'm drawn to it. And that's all I know. I've seen it. I haven't heard it really discussed.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Great. Well, it's good to know, what background we all have. And my hope is that you'll come away from this class knowing something about it and that it's the beginning of understanding its use, its value, and its meaning. And it'll just be the beginning of a journey because it never ends. There's always more to learn, and more always benefit to be derived from it if you understand and can make use of it. So there are 1,000 ways to teach Kabbalah and to teach about the Sphirot. I'll show some pictures and diagrams in just a minute, but let me begin by saying this: when you're meditating, you enter a kind of a more subjective world. You close your eyes, you're not looking at things, and sometimes you might use your imagination and construct some kind of inner world, or if you're counting or something. I mean, these images might come to mind, and you could say they're subjective images, and you could say that in some cases people might have similar images that they contemplate. And so I might use the term I once heard, intersubjective. Like these are like maps that you create in your mind, and that when you share a similar map with somebody else, they have a similar structure in their subjective experience. And that's what maps and diagrams are for, to give us some kind of visual representation of some kind of non-physical dimension. So when we were talking about the four worlds, that's exactly what that is in a very simplified way. That we might imagine that there's a physical, a relational, an intellectual, and a spiritual world. And when you start to see things through that lens, it starts to make sense, and you can start to understand things from that perspective. Ben Franzel, who's been in the class with us but wasn't able to be with us tonight, he said he'll watch the recording. He said that he started thinking about the four worlds concept, and it started to make sense to him. So that was heartening. So you can imagine then that there's some kind of lower and higher, and there's some kind of energy or directionality that goes either up or down or both. And so I'm going to share my screen and share a few images here. All right. Okay. I'll make this a little bigger. Here we go. Let's see what happens if I double click on that and do we have that image? Well, no, I think we'll just look at it like this. This is a Kabbalist, probably from the 13th century, who is meditating on the Sfirot. And you can see, I mean, you're kind of seeing what's in his imagination. And it's actually holding it. I mean, so it becomes like almost physical. It has that kind of reality to it. This is a picture of Ezekiel down on the banks of the Euphrates, I think it is, and he's envisioning this chariot. He has a vision of God seated on a throne chariot. And so we've had these kind of powerful images in our tradition that are reflected in our liturgy. And the Sefirot we see in our liturgy as well. Mm-hmm. All right. Here's some very ancient diagrams that the Kabbalists used. You know, the Star of David was frequently used, and all kinds of symbols to try to make sense of concepts and abstract ideas and non-physical realities. All of these ideas circulated in the ancient Near East until around the 13th century, when it was written down by Moshe de Leon in the Zohar, which is like a compendium, like a long, rambling commentary on the Torah. And throughout, he uses these terms, Malchut and Tiferet and so forth. And he didn't have any diagrams, but the Kabbalists who read his work and studied his work created a diagram that corresponded to the human body. Oh, okay, I'll tell you that in a second. But here's an early representation of the Sfirot. And you'll see one is in this Tree of Life network that you see. And then also down in the left-hand corner, you see them represented as concentric circles, which was my preferred model, because the Sfirot are a little hierarchical. The concentric circles are not so much. But you can see how it maps onto the human body. Oh, there it is. Mm-hmm. And this was a means for meditation. Like when you're sitting meditating, you can visualize, Keter up here. And when do you do something like that?
I do, actually. And when you think about the Sfirot corresponding to different parts of the body, one of the things I do.
Oh, let me make sure you get a little closer.
Yeah, when you think about, as Rabbi Moshe was saying, when you think about the Sfirot being associated with different parts of the body, so one of the things I do when I meditate, when we were talking about what practices can you do, is I do imagine the energy going from my feet, which is Malchut, the lower one, and working its way up through each Sfirot, and imagining the energy going through my body that corresponds to each of this Sfirot, and then working it down again. So that's just a meditation that you can do, an energy work that I found useful.
Mm-hmm. And you can see how they somewhat correspond to the chakras.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
See that? Is there anything in Chinese philosophy that matches that?
Tons of it. There's a lot of Chinese mapping of things onto the body, onto parts of the body. They would have more meridians. The Chinese would have like
That's
lines
right.
of energy rather than so much centers of energy, but they would also, meridians converge on various places throughout the body too.
And this has a middle column, sort of like the Qigong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one aspect that we'll come back to in the Sefirot is this sense of balance. You can be a little too far to the right or a little too far to the left, and the ideal, they all seem to keep referring back to the center and the sense of balance and this polarity between them. These different.
Can I just add one thing
Yeah.
to that too? Not only do they have the balance, but it's kind of, if you're like thinking about Jungian psychology, each Sefirot has its the helpful aspects, but also it has its shadow aspects. So there's a lot you can work with, both from the balance and also each one having its what you'd like to see more and what you'd like to see less.
Not surprisingly, that's very Chinese as well.
Uh-huh.
Everything has its yin and yang, its polarity.
Uh-huh. So let's take a look at another diagram. This is the tree of life, what's called the tree of life. And I'll mention that each of these points is called a sephirah, and altogether in plural form it's sephirot. And sephirah relates to the word sefer and sipor, which is a book and story, but also for counting. I forget or sefirat ha'omer, counting of the omer. Yeah. So this shows now the relationship between them. I'll just tell you briefly. The bottom, if you were making a car, an automobile, the bottom represents the material fabric of the vehicle. And then going up, you've got the styling and performance. You've got monitoring systems, cycles, operating systems. The driver is in the center. Controls, power, design of the vehicle, concept of the vehicle. I mean, that's one way to think about it. But from the more physical and material to the more abstract, you can just imagine that in any process or anything that exists. And then you'll see here in the top center, there's another sephirah with the dotted line, and that is called Chokhmah Bina Da'at, knowledge. And that's not considered one of the 10. It's kind of like an extra center of energy that's for some reason is not counted as in the same way that the others are. There are probably reasons for
Yeah,
that.
because
Can I say
11's a bad
something
number.
about,
10's a good number.
Yeah,
can I say something about Da'at?
sure.
Yeah, what is this Da'at? The way, again, I learned from my teacher, Reb Shlomo, through the Hasidic Rebbes, is there's knowing and then there's knowing. I can know something in my head, or I can know it in a different way. And the word Da'at is the same word as Adam knew Eve. Okay?
Biblical.
Adam knew Eve. The Da'at, it's the same thing. I know it by becoming one with it, by embodying it. That's Da'at.
Yeah, I think also it could be looked at as grok. Yeah, I really grok something from our days of,
Nice. All right, a few other diagrams we have here. Oh, let me let Jerry in. Okay.
In what system is 11 a bad number, Phil?
Almost any. 10's the number that moved through the Renaissance. Since this is a Renaissance type of experience, you would think that they would use the number 10, which is like a perfect number. 1, 2, 3, 4, add up to 10. Pythagoreans like 10. 11's a prime, small prime, not a very, you don't see things coming in 11s very much.
That's right. Okay, so this shows a little more detailed version, and then here's something even more detailed, and you can see with all the colors and the circles now, the larger circles, there's the 4 worlds. You can see them corresponding to these different dimensions. And then we've got that's in black and white, and then here's something a little more cosmic. That's the one they use on the cover of this book. I think it might be called Jacob's Ladder. I'm not sure. I'd have to study that. But that's like, one connected to the other, connected to the other. There's all kinds of
10.
symbolism. Yeah. Here are all sorts of other Kabbalistic diagrams throughout the ages. This is the concentric circles that I like. You see Malchut, the first one is in the middle, and then the more ethereal ones are on the outer edge, and then up in the blank space is Ein, or Ein Sof, which is boundless energy. So the way that the Sephirot work, it's like a stepping down of energy. So I think this diagram is helpful because you see the divine energy out here, and then as it goes through these gradations from just divine, electricity, light, down to lower levels until you come to the physical world. So that's how that energy travels in one direction or the other. Or if you like the vertical diagram, let's see, we'll come back here. You can imagine the energy traveling from the top, its most abstract form, down to the right and then to the left. This from Keter, Chokhmah, Bina, through Da'at, and then Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut. So all 10 or 11. The energy goes down, and that's like, it explains the whole story of creation. And then the energy goes up. That's this journey that we're on. Somehow, as human beings, we are returning to the source somehow. And there's just every instant there's this energy is pulsating. It's from creation to manifestation and then back to its source. Any comments, observations, questions about that?
Just that when you see these lines in between, the whole system is very dynamic. So each sphera works with it works with another sphera. So they all work together and influence each other.
And another thought, Rabbi Moshe, when you were talking about the energy going down and the energy coming up, it's a traditional song we sing at the Pesach Seder.
Oh.
There's this song in Hebrew that goes, Mipnei ma, yoredet haneshama milmala, mipnei ma, yoredet haneshama laguf. For what and for why does the soul come down from heaven? For what and for why does the soul come down from heaven? She comes down because she needs to go up. She comes down because she needs to go up. That's the story of Pesach. And it's also the story of the Sfirot.
Nice. I had not heard that. I want to finish up these images and then I'll stop sharing. So let's see if there's anything else. Oh, okay. This is kind of a medieval diagram, maybe Aristotelian or something. And you see matter in the center, and it goes out to body, mind, soul, and spirit. You see that's kind of how it works in these kinds of diagrams, these concentric circles, and you can see how it lines up. It gets a little more complicated with the 4 letters and the 4 worlds and all these different qualities. And that's even more complicated and more. And then, all these other systems that you can map onto each other. There's a spiral. I like to think of the Sphirot as a spiral actually. And, if you look at it from the side, you see it going up and down. And if you look at it from the top, you just see the concentric circles. So all kinds of, it just gets so deep and a little arcane. So that's what we have. Let's see, is there anything else here? Oh, that's a class that I was the teacher of many, many years ago. So let's stop sharing the screen so I can see your faces. What are your reactions to all of this? It seems it's definitely it's metaphysical. It was almost like a science for these Kabbalists. It got into so much depth and detail, and people devoted their lives to contemplating these concepts and energies and lines and things going up and down. So, what are your thoughts?
This is Kathy.
Yes.
I have a question. You just showed us so many different images. Were those all in your research about our topic at hand? Because some of them
Yes.
didn't look like they had any Jewish foundation specifically. Some were obviously looked very psychological. Some just looked like, just another way to map human existence.
Mhm.
But you're saying those were all around this.
No, they're all, some are definitely not from Jewish sources.
That's okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
All right, so oh, sorry, Wendy, what were you saying?
You may have heard about the Quabala, and that's
Oh.
more.
With a Q.
Yeah.
Well, I think they still pronounce
Those
it
are-
Kabbalah, but it's
It's non-Jews who adopted Kabbalah.
Yeah.
there was a
And
Christian
esoteric.
Kabbalah
Yeah.
tradition.
I see what you're saying. Okay, but
Esoteric, yeah.
But
So-
the basic images that Moshe was showing of the 10 circles and how they were connected, that's all from Jewish Kabbalah.
okay, so then I get into the weeds with the words we use, and of course, I don't know, is this translated from some other language, not even necessarily Hebrew, but some of the words were kind of the different images, some of the words, concepts, were rather similar. And then some of the concepts that were in the different places in these charts, basically, were really, really different. And my experience with Judaism, at least more modern Judaism, is that in an effort to become more egalitarian or more diverse or more, just sensitive, that we have changed some things that we do and what we say, but we're not talking about people who had progressive ideology. We're talking about people in the, what did you say, 14th century?
13th century.
Okay, but then my question is, we're looking at different conceptions of it using, it seemed to me, I didn't get to spend a lot of time looking at these, but which I would like to do, but it seemed to me that there were some real changes in what the basic core, not the overall basic core, I think that was probably consistent, but each element, they were using a lot of different kinds of words, concepts, meanings. And I'm throwing it out there. I'm just saying,
Well, Kathy,
wow.
you're right. It might have been a mistake for me to throw so many different
No.
diagrams at
I
you all
loved
at
it.
once. But let me say, without getting caught up in the weeds, that the general principle is that there's a movement of energy or of ideas from lower to higher. Oops. Let me let Paulette in. From lower to higher or higher to lower, there's a progression that moves either vertically, and there's also some kind of dynamic that moves horizontally. In terms of balance, from right to left, from one extreme to the other, right? So that's the general principle. And then you divide it up into 10, just to create these different categories within that overall schema. And there you have it. Let me get to Jerry. Jerry, you've had your hand raised.
Okay, so just try to bear with me.
Yeah.
I've been on the spiritual path for decades, right?
Yeah.
I see that this is a tool that's used to bring me closer, or anyone closer, to my ultimate spiritual spirit, right? I've used as many tools as that's been available to me. Education, reading everything I could on spirituality, every other religion. My religious experience, the different religions that I've been, I'm not going to say part of, but that I've observed or participated in or listened to. My emotions, psychology, therapy, 12-step programs, all of those have been, and this model you're giving me, all of those have been helpful tools for me to continue on my journey to where I'm feeling that I'm connected with the spirit that I know that is inside of me and where I'm going and what I need. So I find that for me now, this is a very simple thing. I go from being a human to the spiritual part of me because I've been working on it for 75 years, if not longer.
Nice.
And
You said that beautifully. Exactly. It's a tool.
yeah, it's a tool.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we start out at different places in our life, we have to use different tools to get to where it is that we want to get to. And
Beautifully said. Thank you. Debbie.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Jerry sort of touched on what my question was going to be. It's how do you make this usable in your life? You know, it's very conceptual. There are many different ways of expressing it. Why should I know about that? How does it become useful for my life?
Great. Wendy's hand went up right away.
Well,
Wendy and then Arya.
yeah, for one thing, before we get too much in the weeds, most practically, we tend to work with the lower seven. So the ones that are, you know, the Hakmont, Bina, Keter, they're too far beyond. You just, you know, I only use it as an energy, but you use, most people use the lower seven, and, you know, we can certainly go over, you know, how they're used, but I use it more as a psycho-spiritual way of looking at myself, almost like a musar, when we go over the different qualities of the different sphirot. But you know, the main thing is to focus on the lower ones, lower seven.
Debbie asked a question, right? Okay, I'd like to share what I do. One way of making it simple is to use the way it maps to the body. You know, like people are used to thinking about chakras. This is a way of doing it. Okay, so you have the 10 sphirot. You have Keter, which is above the head. That's beyond what we can think or imagine. That's Keter, up there, the crown. Then you have Chachma, usually translated as wisdom. It's non-dual consciousness or right brain consciousness. So I need to have my Chachma if I'm going to be creative, if I'm going to get beyond words. But then you have Bina, usually translated as understanding. That's dualistic consciousness, being able to make discernment. I better not cross the street because there's a car coming. We teach that to the kids right away. Then going down to the lower seven, as Wendy was talking about, there's chesed, loving kindness, which maps to the right hand. I can think of that as reaching out to others, kindness, love, no boundaries. But then there's gevura, which maps to the left hand. That's boundaries. No, I can't help you today because I'm doing something else. And then there's the heart. That's tiferet. That's compassion, which is the balance. And for my practice personally, most situations I want to be in the tiferet place. I want to know how to balance saying yes and no. I need to do that as long as I'm a human being. Then there's Yesod, which maps to the genitals. And that has to do with creativity. It has to do with connection. It has to do with planting seeds. It has to do with giving birth. It has to do with creativity. What am I going to bring into the world? And then goes all the way down to the feet. What?
Netzach and Hod.
I forgot about what?
Netzach and Hod.
Oh, Netzach and Hod. Yeah, right. I'm sorry, Netzach and Hod. Netzach is the right thigh. Hod is the left thigh. Netzach is sacred space. And Hod, let me finish what I'm doing. Okay. You get to say what you say. I get to say what I say. I'm going to do a Gevura here. We each get to say our own thing. So Netzach is about sacred space. Hod is about sacred time. So it practically means, when do I want to consecrate the space? Moshe, you consecrate the space here by arranging things beautifully, by making it ready for us. Netzach is sacred time. Hod is sacred space. Hod is like the holy temple. So you make this place sacred space. The Netzach is when I set aside a time. Maybe it's Shabbat, maybe it's something else. Maybe I set aside time to be with people I love. Okay, so that's how I practice that. And then finally there's Malchut, which is the feet. How am I standing on the ground? What am I doing here in the physical world? So it's an endless way to contemplate, how am I balancing all these qualities throughout my day?
Thank you.
I just wanted to say personally, I've been working a lot with Netzach, which is also endurance, and Hod, which is kind of beauty, as Ari said, sacred space. It's also humility and saying thank you. Mm-hmm. And in my life, I'm a retired nurse practitioner. Too much Netzach, too much endurance, pushing. And I found that I have to watch myself not to do so much pushing and move more into the Hod, more into the beauty, the sacred space, and the humility of just not knowing and not pushing myself so hard. So on a practical life, journey, I've learned what I'm maybe too strong in and what I need to work on a little bit more.
Yeah.
Very helpful. Thanks to both of you.
Good. Yeah. I hope that did help. Nice.
Is there a formula for the perfect balance?
Is there a formula? The formula is be in the present moment and see what the balance is needed. But to be aware, my intention, between chesed and gevura, between yes and no, is I ask for the consciousness that I can be in the moment and know what the balance is each moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you'll see on the right side and on the left side of this tree of life diagram, on the one side there's like love and openness and energy, and on the other side is strength and strictness and boundaries and definitions. So you can see there's definitely a dynamic between them. And you need both, right? And always in the right balance. Judith, is this like anything you've encountered before?
Well, not really. But I mean, I have heard it, and actually I was in that neo-Hasidism class that you took, so I heard it there too. But it's just that I don't do anything with it in the rest of my life, so it doesn't stick. And I'm interested to hear more about how what Wendy's sort of routine is, or morning practice.
Yeah.
Using it.
I would say, and then I'll let you share, is I think it is a contemplative tool. And I think it's something that probably mostly involves sitting and meditating and kind of visualizing it. So it becomes some visualized, it's a process and something that it's almost like you can live in that universe. There's a whole universe there, and it's like, existing in some kind of imaginary three-dimensional structure. But go ahead, you can.
All right, did you want to tell your story?
You go first.
Just like I had mentioned that, I do the spherot, the kind of energy work, imagining the energy going through the various spherot and working, going up and down the body. but mostly it's a contemplative, like, well, where am I? What do I need to work on, and what do I need to push? Pull back from. And as I say, like, if you were looking at Hesed, you certainly you want to be full of loving kindness, but as Ari was talking about, if you're too much on that loving kindness, then nothing gets, then you lose yourself and you don't get anything done. That could be, especially if those of us who have been in a life of service, you could really get yourself really worn out from too much of the chesed. So a lot of it is where am I doing, how am I doing the day, and what I need to work on in terms of more of, and what I need to draw back on, and how they all work together.
Well, Wendy, do you like when you start out in your meditation, then you said you started with the feet, so then do you visualize each part of the Sefirot and ask some question associated with that part? And if you say, okay, I'm in balance there, you move on to the next part? Or I can't quite understand the actual specifics of your practice.
I mean, I think that's a good idea. That's not how I do it, but I think that is very, very worthy. The energy work is more as a meditation tool, and I'm just imagining the energy and going to the different parts of my body that, like, for example, I recently had some surgery on my salivary gland. Where is that closest? It's closest to Bina. So I did a lot of meditation work on Bina while I was trying to bring about more healing to that part of my body. Where what I was talking about before is more like, sitting and just taking taking stock of where I am, or if I'm feeling kind of yicky, trying to think, okay, what part of the Sefirot is out of balance for me. So they're two different processes.
Thank you.
Wendy had invited me to tell a story that I kind of started earlier. Okay, so here's how Reb Shlomo introduced chesed, loving kindness, gevura, strictness, and tiferet, compassion and balance to us. He said, imagine you're going, and by the way, each of these qualities is also associated with one of our patriarchs. Chesed is associated with Avraham Avinu, with Abraham. Gevura is associated with Yitzchak Avinu, with Isaac, and Tiferet with Jacob. So he says, imagine you're going through the desert and you come to Abraham's tent. You know the story of Abraham and the angels, right? So Abraham would say, oh, I'm so glad to see you. You have to come in, you have to stay. He would welcome you with so much warmth. It's Abraham's tent. Next day, you wind up at Isaac's tent. Isaac can see through your surface. He looks deep through you and he sees where you're at. And he says, you're not ready to come in here yet. You need to do a little more work. Come back later when you're ready. That's Isaac, Gevura. Boundaries. Then you go to Jacob's tent. Jacob is the heart, Tiferet. Jacob looks through you and he sees you're not really ready yet, but he says, come on in anyway.
Philip, you're used to working with a lot of symbols and philosophies. How does all this strike you?
Well, I'm looking right here at a diagram that maps the Sefirot onto the Jewish holidays. And it shows me that, this is a very general purpose way of looking at the world. I can't help but step back a little bit and say, well, okay, I've seen a lot of symbol systems, and this one has enough complexity that it can, it's very open in the way you can interpret the connections between the various elements. So it's intriguing to me. I see a lot of, I have a lot of Taoist amulets, and there's a lot of similarity. I think this up and down and the bilateral symmetries that are in it are very powerful human kind of symbols. I am interested, and it sounds like we all are in, in Wendy's process, and how you can use these, because it's I have used meditation before, moving the chi around, and you can, the map of the chi you can follow as the map of the spherode, and that seems like that's a good thing to do, but there's obviously a lot of multi-symbolic ways that you can interpret the different elements and how they fit together. I mean, in this one, Shabbat is the bottom. What's the bottom one?
Malchut.
Malchut is Shabbat, and Yom Kippur is the top one.
That's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think that's what makes this whole spherode diagram so interesting. In the hands of an interesting symbologist, it takes on another meaning. I never really thought of it that way, but Shabbat
Philip,
is
what's
every
really
day.
interesting about that is Shabbat, the mitzvah is to eat a lot, and Yom Kippur, the mitzvah is to eat
Yeah.
nothing.
I'm sure that fits
That's
well.
funny.
It fits well.
While we're going around the table, Vaughn, any thoughts, impressions, anything come to mind? No. Okay. Greg, anything?
It's just, I'm thinking of walking into a store in Chinatown and seeing those pressure points for acupuncture, and releasing the energies.
That's right.
And holding the energies. It just all seems to be part of the same search.
I think it is. Absolutely. All right. Any other impressions from the folks on Zoom? Kathy, Paulette, Suzanne?
The only thing I'm still back with my formula is the question is, are these in any kind of order?
Yes.
These elements?
Yes.
And
I think,
if one is higher than another, is it some higher? Is there a bigger percentage of time in terms of if you create a balance, if you're trying to create a balance and all these elements are important, are they as important as each other? Or is there some hierarchy where there's greater importance, greater time, greater effort, greater intention put towards, let's say the higher element?
well, there is definitely a hierarchy. But I think depending on, where it depends on where your focus is or what your goal is. But the ones toward the bottom, and I'll share my screen so we can look at the diagram again, because I would be remiss if I didn't go over each sphera and its relationship, and I'll do that briefly. But yes, but it really depends on what you're working on or what the need is at the moment.
And I do want to mention that, you're thinking about Malchut, well, that's the feet, but it's also the Shekinah. So, so you might think it's low, but you can't get any higher than the Shekinah also, so it's...
Yeah.
Is it the circle? Is it the Ouroboros? Is it, the snake swallowing its tail? The top one swallowing the bottom? Some kind of cyclical.
There's a
thing?
cycle, cyclical nature to this. I'll show this diagram where the sephirot are mapped on the human body, and we'll just and you might try to visualize this. And the way it's lined up is that it's at the person's back. So we're going to go from the top to the right to Chokhmah, and you associate that with your right ear or that area on the right side of your head. So that's how it's connected here. And let's see how if there's anything else I was going to say generally. I guess not. But for now, Keter means crown in Hebrew, and that's the highest, the most abstract form of energy, completely beyond any comprehension, any human experience, just beyond, beyond, beyond. Then we move down to the right, Chokhmah, that's wisdom. That's when that energy comes to us like in a flash of inspiration, like we just have a sense or of intuition, okay? But it's not very clear. And then we go across to Bina, that's understanding, and that's when it takes shape, when a thought or inspiration takes shape and becomes defined in as a thought or an action. And then da'at is knowledge that Aryeh was speaking about earlier.
Can I say something about da'at?
Yeah.
They don't, I've seen different things about where it might be located. It seems like most things I read is it's located around the throat. Though I've read it might have something to do with third eye. It makes more sense there, but I see it much more in the throat area. But I've also learned that it can be also moves up and down, which I kind of like the best.
And since it's not really a fixed
Exactly.
sphera, it's more fluid.
Yeah.
Now, I'll mention that Hasidism is mystical, and Chabad, that we've all heard of, is actually the name Chabad comes from an acronym describing these three sefirot, Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at. Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. That's very interesting. That's a nice name. And then we go down to Chesed, which is kindness, compassion. That's associated with our right shoulder. And then Gevura, strength, definition, strictness on the left shoulder. Tiferet in the heart. Netzach is the right hip or thigh. Hod is the left hip or thigh. Yesod, the genitalia, and Malchut, the feet. So do you see the direction? You can go from top down or from top up or from one side to the other. There's as a contemplative aid.
Thank you, Moshe. That was a very clear explanation. I would address that question of, how much time do you spend on the one or the other? My personal experience, having done this for a while, is that it's about all of the above all the time. It's about constantly rebalancing. Reb Zalman once compared the religions of the world to the human body. He'd say, well, the brain is very nice, but if you have a brain and no heart, you don't have anything. If you have a heart and no kishkas, you don't have anything. And my experience is that it's like that with the Sfirot.
I see. Yes.
The point is, where is the balance at each moment, which I think is what you're practicing.
Excellent. I am compelled to share that even the Sefirot are reflected in our liturgy. And I'll show you, because there's a song that we sing when we're parading around with the Torah. You know this one. Lecha Adonai. Watch this. Ha-gedula. That's another name for Chesed. Veha-gevura. Veha-tiferet. Veha-netzach. Veha-hod.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And probably in other liturgical passages we see it.
Yeah, in the morning prayers, you thank God for I just blanked it. But we're thanking God for Gevurah, and also after that you're thanking God, Otir Yisrael, the Tiferet. So you're thanking God.
Ozer Yisrael b'gvura,
Yeah, thank you.
v'oter Yisrael b'tifara. You guide us with gevura, with strength, but you crown us with tiferet. You crown us with compassion.
Those are the morning blessings when you first wake up.
Yeah. And I think a general statement I want to say is that this conceptual framework, this metaphysical framework, I think was in the minds of rabbis and Kabbalists for centuries. I mean, it's like they lived in this other world. And the Zohar is all about that world that they travel through, and it describes the relationships between the different Sefirot, and it's just this whole contemplative universe that they created and lived in, and that is so much a part of our tradition, even though most of us are not aware of that. Any other comments or questions about that before we move on to a different idea?
Well, I
Yes.
I I have a question, and I missed the last class. Um, and this may sound totally uh, um, obvious, but I guess the idea is that these are all dimensions of spirituality. These are all um, vehicles or elements of achieving a, a spiritual existence or experience.
That's right.
Uh,
Absolutely. These are it's a symbology of of non-physical realities. We're all so tied to physical things, and that's the world that we live in most of the time. But for these people that would sit and contemplate and or live in their imaginary world, this became their reality. This became their universe. It's a non-physical reality.
well, when I think of spirituality, uh, I also think of some sort of a sustaining resource, not just a metaphysical place.
Hmm.
Uh, um,
Well, I think it was that too, and we imagine the energy coming down from Ein Sof, from Keter, down through all these different levels to the physical world, and we exist in all of those levels, in all of those dimensions at once, and the energy is constantly flowing through them, up and down and throughout. I don't know if that
So,
makes sense.
how about the energy flowing within the community of faith? I mean, is this Sephira just something that an individual experiences, or is there a way for the group to experience it all at once?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, and I could just look at Hesed and Gevurah, which is something that we have to look at as a community. How much are we going to open our doors up to people and be giving? But how much is it? How much do we need that Gevurah in there as well? Like when Aryeh was in the House of Love and Prayer, there was so much Hesed there that people were taking advantage, and you had people shooting drugs in the basement. I think you were saying. So you need some gevurah as well. So there's some qualities you want to bring to a community in terms of just how much you want to do.
One answer to your question, this was Judith who asked this question, yes? Judith is in this week's Torah portion, it's about building the Mishkan in the desert, right? The portable sanctuary. And God says to Moses, build me a sanctuary in this world so I can dwell among you. That's obviously a community endeavor, but it's creating the sanctuary. Now, practicing that as a community is one way to create the sanctuary. The other is each of us. If we're willing to receive the Sfirot in our practice, right? I practice a little loving kindness. I practice a little compassion. It's not like I'm doing something. It's like I'm receiving God's energy through me and allowing that to get expressed through me. So the answer is yes, yes.
There is much more that could be said, but I'm going to start to wrap it up here, and then you can stay on if you want. We can continue the conversation, and I think in May we should have another series dealing with the counting of the Omer, because that has everything to do with the Sefirot. And you combine one Sefirah with another, and there's like 49 combinations. You use the lower 7 Sefirot, and you combine one with, there's every possible combination. So that's something we can talk about later. But explore how the idea sits with you. Meditate, reflect on it. If you might look at a diagram, you can find them easily, and see if you can make sense of it, and if you find it useful. I guess I should say about my own practice, I don't think about the Sefirot much. But it's like a land that I've been to, and I know it, and I can always return to it. And I don't dwell there much, but it's given me this sense that there's this world and other worlds. And just like I think about the experience I had with my son and this boy I told you about, who we went up in a plane, I think there's something about that fascinates me, the ability to go up and come down. My paragliding as well, just to be able to do that gracefully and to ascend through these different worlds and live and be comfortable in all of them, and yet also be grounded at the same time. Any final thoughts or questions, reactions?
My final thought is, if anyone here has not done much with the Sefirot and wants to think about a way to get started, a simple step. One way to do that is to think about chesed, loving kindness, and gevura, limits, and tiferet, balance, harmony. Mm-hmm. And to think about, how do I want to deal with these 3 energies today, right now? How much loving kindness, how much boundary, how much balance and compassion? It's a simple way to get started, just using those 3.
Absolutely. Beautiful. All right, so I like that story about the tents, because I think CJC can be a tent where we see you, and you can come and be part of the community anyway.
Right.
Here we are.
It was
All right.
founded that way.
So I give you permission to be on your way if you want, or stick around and chat if you have any other comments or questions. Would love to hear them. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I've enjoyed it very much.
Good.
Thank you.
Me too.
All right. To be continued.
All right.
Good, because it raises a lot of interesting questions.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we think, I think it's hard. You have to sort of triangulate between thinking of it as a map, or some sort of map of human capabilities, the dynamics of of a spiritual being that's human. It does stand on the ground, but it's all, and I think there's a tendency, at least I can have, for people to think, well, I'm going from this location to this location to this location, whereas, Arya, you kind of captured it. It's an entire system, and each component has to be dynamic and adjusted, and the adjustments are always changing. It's not like you pass a test and you go, okay, got that one down, going to the next circle. It's not chutes and ladders. It's really a dynamic balance that helps you. One way I think that can help a person to find balance in their spiritual journey through life, however it's adjusted.
That's a beautiful way to say it, Bill. Thank you.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to say that I'm also a Taoist. We have a Taoist tea ceremony every morning. And the way I do the Sefirot is with the Taoist tea. The first cup is chesed. The second cup is gevura.
Wow.
Yeah, I just also want to say that actually we start counting the Omer the second day of Pesach. So that's going to actually be in the beginning of
in April.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And
So
you
that's
know
when
what?
we
I
first
forget to
start.
mention that tonight is Rosh Chodesh Adar.
It is.
Oh, It's the beginning of the Hebrew month of Adar,
is.
and they say when Adar arrives, joy increases.
That's right.
Amen.
Yay.
May it be so.
All right. Any Greg?
We're down.
Love to hear what you're thinking. What's going on in your mind?
Doors opening, windows opening. I live so much in the here and the now. I'm in the service industry. That balance, that fight,
Yeah.
that I tend to fall on the chesed side, and I go home and there's nothing left of me. Or I've had this experience in the psych units where I get too far into that side, and I can't communicate with my clients anymore because there needs to be limits. There's so much here.
I was thinking about your work in terms of that, the chesed and the gevurah,
Yes.
and how relevant that must be.
It truly is. It
Yeah.
truly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy.
Really what I just wanted to say was that this has been wonderful, and I look forward to more of this.
Awesome.
Good.
Okay. Glad to have you with us.
This is Jerry. Can I say just one thing?
Sure.
Well, not one thing. I can never just say one thing, but so what I am impressed with is that everybody that is here is obviously on their spiritual journey, and there is something more that we want. I believe that this is just a good way to find a balance. When I hear about you talking about the body, we're trying to find a balance to be the best that we can be, to reach that spiritual point, to give back to the world whatever we can, but to be balanced in when we do it. So thank you for all wanting to be on this spiritual journey. It makes me have more hope for our world.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Vaughn, tell me something. It's something. Whatever. I always value what you're thinking, and I wonder what might have gone through your mind tonight. If I'm putting you on the spot, I'm sorry about that. It's okay. You don't have to say anything.
I'm thinking about something else because my friend is interested in cosmology, about how the universe was created and how it works and everything. And he sent me a video showing how many galaxies there might be in the universe. This guy that made the YouTube video is funny, and he put all these Cheerios in a swimming pool, and then maybe it's 355 such swimming pools and so on. But my friend wanted to argue, he's an atheist, he wanted to argue that since we're such a small speck and it's so unlikely that there would be only one planet with life on it and one kind of being with consciousness and everything, that there would only be one God. There might be possibly an infinite number of gods, so why insist on one God? And so I had my answer to that, and I was thinking about that, because when you see all those galaxies,
What's your answer?
well, I mean, my answer was that there might be all these other gods, but what matters to me is how to be a good person, how to relate to others, and how to relate to plants and animals on Earth and everything. It doesn't, I mean, he's talking to me and to some fundamentalist Christian relatives, and they have their own truth, but he knows I'm more liberal than they are, but I'm not going to just say, oh, you just proved it, there's no God.
Need another
cornflake Cheerios.
Did you see any connection between cosmology and the origin of the universe and the Sefirot?
Well, yeah.
Okay, good. Good. Because I think this is the Kabbalists were wondering about how the universe came to be, and I think they find some way of explaining it by way of this Sefirot. How the energy comes down from above.
Whereas I've heard another trend in Judaism saying, don't ask about that. Just don't ask about what's before and don't ask about what's after this life. Just think about this life.
That's right. Well, anyway, thank you for the conversation. I found it stimulating and enjoyable. Thank you as well.
One more thing, I've got to say it, one more thing.
Go for it.
So besides wanting us to be where we are, whatever I feel the energy is attracting, you want to call it God, nature, the creator, energy, is that you're all listening. You're all aware that you're being asked and being invited to become part of that, whatever it is that you believe in.
Thank you, Jerry. Beautiful. Carry on, and we'll be together again soon, God willing.
I have one more thing that I just like to suggest, and that is I'd love to hear what people are doing with the information that they've been learning or hearing about, and how they are applying it, or if they are applying it to their personal spiritual practice, because it sounds like a number of people are either interested in really developing a spiritual practice or already have one. So I would love to I don't know if kind of an open blog or just something so that when we're not in class, that we had a way to communicate with each other and just get to know people better and just, find out what they do, what they're thinking about, going into a little more detail on why they're here. So I just kind of wanted to put that out.
Suzanne, that's my goal in having a spirituality chavurah. It's a group of friends and who share interest in whatever the group decides, and this is a spirituality chavurah. So I think these series will continue, and I think next time we're together we can ask, so, we learned about the Sefirot, 2 months ago. What, have you been thinking about them? Have you been making use of them in any way? I think we can all check in with each other later on. How's that sound?
I think it sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.
להתראות.
Good night.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.